Hey everybody, it's Colin Ellis here and welcome to another Culture and Coffee podcast for Monday the 18th of April 2022. Although, I have to be honest, I'm recording this on Sunday the 17th and I'm at Dodger Stadium to watch a baseball game. One of my favourite teams, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Taking the opportunity while I'm in America to have a look at the Dodgers now. 2 years ago, the Dodgers won it all. They won the World Series, although technically it's only really played in America, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Japan, so not technically the world. But the World Series is competed for by American teams. But they won it all. Now, they've got it's an interesting cultural story because they've got or I'm going to turn it into one. They've got a team full of all-stars. So these guys costs lots and lots of money. The Dodgers have got lots of money. If you've ever seen those LA hats where the L and the A cross, that's for Los Angeles Dodgers, synonymous with the Dodgers. But they have an all-star team. But just because you've got stars in every single position doesn't make you a great team. And now they've also got a great manager, a guy called Dave Roberts. High charisma, which is not necessarily need high charisma to be a leader. In fact, what you need to do is manage the charisma. You do have high charisma, because too much charisma is a bad thing. And so Dave Roberts has moulded the team. It's about making sure that he picks the right players in the right places at the right time. He utilises people in the right way. It's about making sure that he calls on specialists when they're required. But ultimately, it's about the team agreeing how they're going to work together, how they're going to play together. And how they're going to actually achieve the goals that they set. And of course, for someone like the Dodgers, where payroll runs into millions and millions and millions every season, then they want to get as far as they can in the league, where they can actually win the World Series. A bit of excitement there. They just ran a guy out who was trying to score for the opposition. Opposition today are the Cincinnati Reds. So a little bit of excitement. I'm walking down one of the corridors here. All it is food and drink. You'd be surprised. So Dodger dogs, pretzels, cold beer, helmets that they wear full of nachos and cheese. Honestly, it's unbelievable. So Dave Roberts has got to mould that team into something that can win a title and make sure they achieve it. So much like any other culture, but there's a culture that surrounds the Dodgers itself, much like any sports team. And so when you're way up to the park, you see all the billboards and the banners, and all of those things have got to represent the club and what it kind of represent what they're trying to achieve. And it also means that the fans have got to turn up and do their part as well. They've got to turn up and feel the culture of the club. They've got to get into the singing and the chanting and all of those things that they can do to lift the morale of the players. Cincinnati Reds have just scored, hence why no one's cheering that. 7-1 if you're interested. So yeah, and this stadium it's in Elysian Park, it's a neighbourhood of Los Angeles. It's testament to that culture. Anyway, that's not what I'm going to talk about. I just wanted to record the first bit of the podcast whilst I was in the stadium, so you get a sense of the atmosphere here. But this is not where I'm going to be doing all of the podcasts. I'm going to be talking today about how organisations or other organisations are doing hybrid. So for now, it's farewell from Dodger Stadium and speak to you soon. Hello everybody, sorry about that, slightly quieter here. Also, I'm slightly tardy with the podcast. It's been a crazy day, it really has. Lots of driving, but now pitched up here on a rooftop in the sun, which is nice. I'm going to talk to you about hybrid working. I think, and I've been talking a lot about this over the last probably 12 months now. The book that I wrote was published in August, but I was talking about it before then. I still think there is this almost assumption that some organisations have got kind of hybrid working sorted. I'll be honest with you, and I've worked with lots of the big tech companies, lots of smaller companies. I'm not sure anyone's got it sorted yet. I think, I might have mentioned this in the past, I think the tech companies are great at making grand statements about kind of what they're doing and we're going to work from anywhere forever. And it's like, well, okay, but what if you what if your competitors suddenly say, we're coming back in the office and we're doing different stuff, and then you start losing good staff? Will you follow that? Not that I'm suggesting that should be the case, of course, but I think that's, typically what they do is they try to outdo each other culturally, which is great, which is a great thing to do. I don't want you to think that that's a bad thing at all. It's like, oh, they're trying to outdo themselves culturally. That sounds really, really bad. No, I mean, they're always looking at different ways they can enhance their culture, making sure that kind of safety is the foundation for everything, safety, diversity and inclusion, all of these things that really build that sense of belonging, that sense of desire. But when it comes to hybrid working, I'm still not sure that everyone's got it sorted. Let's take Google and Apple as an example, who are now calling it an experiment. This time last year, well, not this time, probably it might have been this time last year, they were very boldly saying we're going to be hybrid in the future. And then it got to September when Americans were expected to be back in the office. And all of a sudden it wasn't like, yeah, we're thinking about bringing people back, but maybe 2 days a week. Are you doing that? Are you doing the 3 and 2 thing, or the 2 and 3 thing? Which is forced flexible, right? It's not hybrid. It's forced flexible. That's the organisation saying, we really don't know what to do, but we don't want to piss you off. Let's be honest. We don't want to do that because we think that you really enjoy working from home. We're not sure yet. So how about we do this scenario where we give you 2 days at home in the hope that you'll kind of be okay about coming in 3 days. That's what's happening, right, isn't it? It's totally what's happening. Like, senior leaders are like, can we make them come back in? HR like, we can't make them come back in. How about 3 and 2? Is that what everyone else is doing? Yeah, let's do that then. Let's totally do the 3 and 2 thing. Although hopefully you're not doing the Monday and Friday thing, right? Where we'll come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But everyone's getting a long weekend. Well, only if you don't trust your staff. That's, and of course, trust is at the root of it. And that's the thing about hybrid when it comes to what are everybody else doing. Well, I think the first thing to make the point is that they're doing something. And so obviously I'm going to give you the good examples on the podcast because I want you to be able to take some things away and say, okay, well, let's kind of pause for thought. Just on the 3 and 2 thing, by the way. Like if the organisation must insist, or if you want to do that as a team manager, just make it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I mean, if you feel that that's what you have to do. I mean, personally, I think a fully hybrid model is the way to go, where you trust everybody to do the right thing, and you might bring people together on a Monday, either in person or virtually, and then you agree where you work. That's hybrid. That's how hybrid works. All right. There's not necessarily a fixed work place. All right, so you could be meeting in a co-working space, you could be meeting in an office, you could do it virtually, whatever. But we basically trust people to do the right thing, and 99% of organisations in one survey said that they expect to have some kind of hybrid arrangement moving forward. But again, with the caveat that they don't really know what it is, or they're not kind of doing it properly. And when you think about kind of hybrid and this is why I like the idea of it. To a point, I like the idea of it being called an experiment, providing that staff are involved. It's not like a senior leadership experiment where we've experimented with it, it failed, everyone back in the office 5 days a week. I like the idea where you kind of get staff involved in kind of like how is it going to evolve? How is it going to change? How is it going to grow? That I like the idea because then it's a collaboration between different staff members on how it'll work, and of course it takes into consideration those people who aren't able to work hybrid. That's the thing. Is not, I'm calling it office privilege, is not everybody can work hybrid. So, you need to make sure that you're very clear on who's eligible and who's not, and you have empathy towards those who aren't, because they'll see it as a perk of the job, being able to work from home. Ultimately, when you're working from home, you're actually working remotely or working from home. It might actually be at home. But you're still working, right? So it's hardly a perk as someone who's worked from home. So it's important to consider that kind of eligibility. But I said that I would talk about what the organisations are doing, and let me talk about some of the good cultures, because like most things, what they don't want to do is turn hybrid into this buzzword, this phrase that everybody uses. Oh, we're working hybrid now. We're working hybrid now. I think as well the organisations that are at least trying to do it well, they recognise that actually, kind of being remote isn't always a good thing. I don't know about you guys. There was isolation. There was that sense of loneliness. There was that real kind of blurring between what was home, what was work, and because the laptop was always there was distractions. That all of these things played into it, and so I think there is a recognition that all of those things are true when you're working remotely. And again, that's part of that engagement, that part of that talking. When you talk about what other organisations are doing, they're having those conversations. But fundamentally, the first thing that they're doing is which is why I'm talking about it on the Culture and Coffee podcast. And I haven't got a coffee. I didn't have one. I had a Bud Light. I did. I told that this week's coffee was a beer. It was a Bud Light in Dodger Stadium. So yeah, I totally failed on the coffee front. Although I have been drinking drip coffee while I've been over in America. It's awful. It's terrible. Don't drink it. If someone offers you a drip coffee, just don't. It's just been sat there for ages. It's overbrewed. It tastes like dirty dishwater. And I can't tell them that because everyone else seems to be drinking. And the other thing about America, I'm going totally off topic here. Americans seem to start, like in Australia and New Zealand, we drink coffee in the morning when it's supposed to be drunk. Here, they start drinking it like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. I took my son to a diner. We went to a diner and it was like 9 o'clock at night. And, we were having an ice cream sundae or something massively unhealthy, which is pretty much everything in America. And people were having coffee. I'm like, why are you drinking coffee? Why are you drinking a stimulant at this time? And I have no idea where I was up to now. But anyway, let's try and kind of backtrack and get back to where I was. Yes, I didn't have a coffee. I had a beer. Yes, culture. They make sure that they've redefined the culture. And so this is not, I'm not talking about a 12-week culture change program or anything like that. I'm talking about people coming back together. That's partly why I'm in the States. People coming back together to re-establish how they want to work together, to actually make some agreements to each other, to talk about what they learned about themselves during hybrid work, to talk about what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, to reconnect, to actually meet people face to face for the first time, to do those connections, to have a town hall in person, to talk about the town halls virtually, and then to establish some kind of working group to look at this thing called hybrid working. Because there have been some positive changes from hybrid working. We saw empathy. Well, definitely at the start, empathy is standard. Flexibility was encouraged. Physical health was prioritised, as was mental health, which we hadn't really had. Mental health always played second fiddle to physical health. So I think that's something else that the organisations that are doing hybrid well, they're considering all of those factors. That said, what they're not doing is allowing people just to do their own thing because that's what they want to do. Do you know what I mean? They're not just being like, oh, well, I don't want to come in on Monday when everyone else comes in. And they go, okay, well, you don't have to. They're making sure that there is empathy between staff, but people aren't being selfish. I talked about that on a previous podcast. That sense of, oh, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to do it, and that's why that re-establishment of culture is super important, because once you get that, then you get that understanding from people. It's like, oh yeah, it's not just about me. It's about the team. I'm part of something bigger than myself. It's about making sure that we make these agreements such that we're all doing the same things in the same way at the same time. So I that culture piece is the foundation. So what do organisations do? Well, we had I mentioned on the podcast. I might have mentioned it once or twice. A couple of the Indian service companies. They said in August last year that they were going to implement a hybrid work model, but then they called everybody back to the office, and there was a bit of an outcry about that. And they said, oh, hang on a minute. We said we'll move into hybrid, but we didn't say we're moving to it immediately. We want to re-establish some form of status quo and create a working party now. I think I mentioned on a podcast that I'm keeping a close eye on this. I'm making sure that that's just not some kind of ruse and everyone's back in the office full time. I want to make sure, I'm keeping my eye out to make sure that they do what they said that they would do. So Google have said that the staff need to be in the office 3 days a week from April the 4th, so from a couple of weeks ago. And then they can work remotely the other 2 days, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be at home. And they're calling it an experiment. And Apple are doing the same, but from April the 23rd, so from next week, Apple are doing the same. Facebook, interesting. Facebook and Twitter were the first two. They're the ones that doubled down early. I said, right, staff can work from anywhere. So Facebook basically said that staff can be fully remote. But, and there is a caveat here, is that they'd be required to take a pay cut if they moved away from kind of the expensive area. So if they moved away from San Francisco and moved into the middle of, I don't know, Wyoming, they can still do that. That's absolutely cool. They've got the technology to do it, but it will come with a pay cut, which is an interesting discussion to have, and one that I had with the senior manager before I came away. And my view is that you get paid the same. You get paid for the job that you do, not where you do it. That's very much my view, because the stress and whatever else comes with the job is still there. It doesn't matter whether you're in San Francisco or Wyoming. And that's something Reddit have said, and Reddit said that they will pay New York wages regardless of where people are based. Salesforce are one of the only Atlassian as well have said that staff can work from anywhere. The interesting thing about Atlassian is they're building a new office in one of the most expensive pieces of real estate in the world in Sydney. So you've got to believe that they believe that it's still important for people to work collaboratively together, which is obviously hybrid work in practice, right? It's that recognition that some things just require in person, and one of the points I've been making while I'm delivering kind of across the next 5 days is that there are some weeks when you'll be co-located with the people that you're working with. It doesn't necessarily be in the office. It could be a co-working space wherever. But there'll be some weeks where you're working 5 days face to face. That's what hybrid is. That recognition that sometimes we're remote, sometimes we're in person, and it what we want to do is plan it as best we can. Dropbox aren't considering hybrid working at all. And so they were the first kind of departure away from that line to sort of say, well, we're not going to do it because they're worried about the different experiences. And I totally get that. I totally understand that. I've been talking about it for my programs as well. And people are like, oh, can we do them hybrid? I'm like, well, no, because you've got two different experiences. What you want is either everybody doing it remotely or everybody in person. Because otherwise, you're trying to create two different experiences, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it creates a disconnect between people. And particularly when you're doing culture building, you want to reconnect people, not disconnect people. So they were the one. They said we're not considering hybrid because we believe that we'll create different working experiences. We're adopting a remote first policy. Remote first policy, and what they're doing is they're recommissioning, is that the right word? Refurbishing their offices to become like co-working spaces. So you no longer get a desk anymore, but they are collaborative spaces, and you can book spaces when you need to work together as a team. So you're remote first, but when you need to come together, you can use what was a Dropbox office, which has now become almost like a co-working space. Lego, interestingly, they unveiled their new office. Was it last week? If you just Google Lego new offices, they're awesome. They're so cool. But again, kind of multi-million-dollar office fit out. And they see in-person work as part of the future of hybrid, which is the essence of it. So there has been that heavy investment in offices, but creating collaborative spaces. And, I've talked about it on previous podcasts, or I've definitely blogged about it. I'm sure I have. Oh no, I did a video. I did a motivational minute, which you can catch on YouTube, about making offices boring. Offices are boring. They are. They don't provide any kind of inspiration or motivation for productive work. So I'm really urging every client I'm working with, although the one that I'm working with this week got awesome office space. Everyone I'm working with, I'm like, listen, can you just do something to make it a more collaborative space? Oh, and stop doing some of the dumbass things that you do. There's some stuff that just drains productive time, and you do it regardless of whether you're hybrid or kind of whether you're in the office. And they're the things that you would address in the culture piece of work. So that's just some examples of what some organisations are doing. Some of my clients, and typically smaller than those guys, well, I've got people who've called everybody back into the office 5 days a week, and that seems to be going okay. You can apply for flexible working if that suits your arrangement. So they're considering, so I've got one in Australia who's done that, one in New Zealand who's done that, and I can't remember if it's by law in New Zealand they have to consider it, but they definitely have to in Australia. So I've got clients who've done that. I've got one client who still hasn't decided what they're doing, and I've said you really do need to decide, because what staff want more than anything else is certainty. What are we doing? It's like, even if it turns out to be the thing that you don't want to do, at least say you gave it a go, or bring a group of people together to experiment. But I think if you're a manager, and I work with a bunch of managers who just want to do hybrid in the way that it should. You can take inspiration from what other people are doing, and you can decide what's right for you right now to make sure that you continue to get work done productively, whilst providing people with a good balance between in-person work and alone work. And that is the essence of hybrid. Is, as a team, you agree what needs to be done and you agree where it needs to be done. All right, I hope you found this interesting. If you've got any questions at all, by the way, about how other companies are doing hybrid, I've got lots of case studies. I've been reading lots and lots of things. Please do. You can message me on LinkedIn. You can email me, colin@colindellis.com. Or if you want to join us in the Culture Makers community, you can do that. www.culturemakers.community. Oh, and look out for... It's April. So the beginning of May will be the new season. So the 4th season of the Culture Makers podcast. So just go and search for Culture Makers podcast. I've done 7 interviews so far. Some really awesome. I can't wait to share those interviews with you. Otherwise, have a great day wherever you are. Ta-ra for now.